This Torah class is brought to you by TorahAnytime.com.
Okay, we have a very interesting shiur prepared. We're going to talk a little bit about what is commonly known as Birchas Yaakov. When I was in third grade, couldn't read anything, could barely read a pasuk in Chumash, but we had to memorize this. So we didn't have any idea what it meant, but we had it, we had it down pat, we had it by heart. And it's called Birchas Yaakov. And we're going to explore whether this in fact is an appropriate title for what is taking place. Actually, we have prepared for you on another sheet, you could give this out, the entire Birchas Yaakov on one sheet, because we're going to be referring to it, and this way you don't have to have the Chumashim in front of you. Okay, we have the Birchas Yaakov consists of 28 psukim, where Yaakov goes through all of the Shvatim, Ruvain, Shimon, Levi, Yehuda, Yezebulun, Yisachar, Dan, Asher, Naphtali, Yosef, and Binyamin. And we're conditioned to think that these are brachos, that Yaakov Avinu, in fact, is giving brachos to his children. After all, this is Yaakov Avinu's last moments in this world. He's about to pass on into the Olam HaEmes. It's his last opportunity to bless his children, and in fact, he gives them brachos. And in the very last pasuk of the Birchas Yaakov, in pasuk Chavches, the pasuk says, Kol Eila Shiftei Yisrael. These are all the tribes of Israel. Shnei Masar, 12. V'zois asher diber lohem aviyem. This is what their father said to them. Vayevarech oisam, and he blessed them. So Rashi, number one, is bothered by a question. What do you mean he blessed them? He didn't bless all of them. Some of the Shvatim, he actually criticized. He gave it to them, right? He clapped them over the head. He gave it to Nibber and Cup. He said, "You're no good." He criticized them. He was mekanteram. Rashi says, how could you say Vayevarech oisam v'halo yesh mehem shaloi bircham elakinteran? Some of the brothers, Ruvain, Shimon, Levi, Yaakov didn't have one nice word to say about them. What did Yaakov say about Ruvain? Ruvain, you're a bum. You're impetuous. You're too quick to make a sense. Shimon and Levi, you have a temper. Well, what do you mean? Levi's a good guy. Levi serves in the Beis HaMikdash. No. Ruvain, Shimon, and Levi, you're angry. You need anger management, right? You need to see somebody. You have a problem controlling your temper. So this is the brachos. With brachos like this, well, maybe we should go for klolos, right? The Birchas Yaakov ends. Yaakov gave them a bracha. Ruvain, not one nice word. Shimon and Levi, all they get is curses. Yehuda, okay. Yaakov says to Yehuda, he's a good guy. What about Yisachar? Yisachar, you're a donkey. Okay, so raise your hand if somebody would call you a chamar. How would you take that? So Dan, you're a snake. Remember, these are beautiful brachos. How heartwarming. He's a snake, right? Zvulun, live by the sea. That's like go jump in a lake, right? You live by the sea coast. Binyamin, my dear Binyamin, you're a wolf. Right? Well, beautiful brachas over here. So Rashi says, what do you mean Yaakov gave them a bracha? Many of the Shvatim he criticized. So says Rashi, even though it seems that he criticized Ruvain, Shimon, and Levi, but the last pasuk in pasuk Chavches, it says Vayevarech oisam, which means he ended off with a bracha. So in other words, whatever has happened until now, whatever Yaakov was telling them until now, at least he concluded with a bracha. And then the pasuk says, if you look carefully in pasuk Chavches, Ish asher kiverchasai beirach oisam. Each one according to the bracha, it says beirach oisam. He blessed them. It should say beirach oisai. He blessed each one separately. What's beirach oisam? So Rashi explains that whatever bracha he gave to Ruvain, they were all included in that bracha. Shimon's bracha included everyone. Levi's bracha included everyone. In other words, Yehuda was not the only lion. They're all lions. Yisachar is not the only donkey, they're all donkeys. Dan was not the only snake, they're all snakes. Okay, well, really beautiful. Okay, so now, not only is Yisachar the only chamar, now Rashi is saying they're all a chamar. So what we would like to explore is, what exactly is this Birchas Yaakov? What kind of brachos are these? You see, right, you go to the Rebbe, what does the Rebbe tell you? You should have, depends what you ask, right? You should have parnasa, you should have good health. But did anybody ever go to a Rebbe and the Rebbe said, "Oh, you should be a snake," right? Again, that's not good for the Rebbe business, right? That would not be good for the Rebbe. You're a chamor, zayge benched. Right? That's not going to cut it. So the Ibn Ezra says like this. What's going on over here? Yaakov introduces his words. He says, Vayikra Yaakov el banav vayomer heyasvu gather v'agida lachem eis asher yikra eschem bi'achros hayamim. Yaakov is not pretending. He's not saying, I'm going to give you a bracha. He's telling them, I am going to tell you the future. I'm going to give you prophecy. Says the Ibn Ezra, take a look at number 2. Eis asher yikra eschem. Davar diber hanavi la'asid. The prophet Yaakov is speaking about the future. V'tau, and it's a mistake, ha'oimrim, that those who say shehem brachos, that these are blessings. It's a mistake to think these are brachas. There are no blessings over here. Maybe Yehuda gets a bracha, but no Ruvain, no bracha. Shimon, no bracha. Yisachar, Zevulun, no. So it's a mistake to think it's a bracha. You know what it is? It's like a news report. It's a prophecy report. Yaakov, on his last day, he's telling his children what is going to happen to you throughout history. Okay. Of all the Mefarshim, the one that deals with this question in the clearest, really the most illuminating form, is the Abarbanel. We're going to take a look at it inside, and then we're going to talk a little bit about the history of the Abarbanel. By the way, the shul's phone service is down. That's why there's no internet. Okay? Fine. So Abarbanel, look at number 4. In number 4, the Abarbanel says the following. And we just want to mention also that this Shiur, the Suda is being sponsored by Rabbi Ezra Cohen, but the Friedman family is sponsoring 100 CDs in honor of the bar mitzvah of their son and grandson, Benjamin. So we want, on this occasion, we want to wish the whole mishpacha lots of nachas from Benjamin, and they should be zocha to be megadohim l'Torah, l'chuppah, l'masim tovim. We wish him bracha v'atzlacha. Mazel tov. Now we have to stick it in the shiur, otherwise they edit it out on the tape. That's why. Okay. So the Abarbanel says the following. Abarbanel asks that what exactly is Yaakov trying to accomplish? There are 4 possibilities of what's going on over here in the Berachas Yaakov. Well, number 1, the first possibility is he's giving them bracha. He's giving them blessings. He's telling them they should have a good life, they should live long, they should have good health, they should have parnasa. That's one possibility. Another possibility, perhaps, is Yaakov Avinu is giving them musar. He's criticizing them. He's telling them what they need to improve on. Another possibility is Yaakov is telling them the future. He's reporting to them what the future has in store for them. And a 4th possibility is none of the above. Yaakov is telling them where they're going to live in Eretz Yisrael. Yehuda, you're going to live in a land that produces a lot of wine. Zevulun, you're going to live by the sea coast. Yisachar, you're going to live by farms. Asher, you're going to live in a fertile land. Okay, so these are 4 possibilities. A, Yaakov is giving them a bracha. B, Yaakov is giving them musar. Perhaps C, Yaakov is telling them about the future, like the Ibn Ezra says. And D, says the Abarbanel, maybe Yaakov is merely reporting to them where they're going to live in Eretz Yisrael. Says the Abarbanel, all of these 4 possibilities are preposterous. They're all impossible. You cannot suggest any of them. Take a look at number 4. Says the Abarbanel, he says, Betachlis habrachas ha'ela, the purpose of these blessings, b'chlal, it is impossible. It could have only been one of 4 possibilities of what Yaakov Avinu is trying to accomplish. Number 1, either he's giving them a bracha, or you look down a little bit, he says, maybe to rebuke them, to give them musar, to correction. Or, perhaps Yaakov is telling them the future. Or, number 4, maybe Yaakov is telling them real estate information. Where are you going to live? Right? Jews always need to know about real estate. Right? So that's another 4th possibility what Yaakov Avinu could have been telling his sons. Says the Abarbanel, all these 4 possibilities are impossible. To say, he says, 3 lines from the end in the first right-hand column, to say that he was giving them a bracha, like it would appear, he gave Yehuda a bracha, it seems he gave Dan a bracha, he gave Asher and Yosef a bracha, but what are you going to say about Ruvain? He didn't give Ruvain a bracha, he didn't give Shimon a bracha, not Levi, not Yisachar, not Gad, not Binyamin. 3rd line, Elamai, you'll say, he was rebuking them, like it seems from what he said to Ruvain, Shimon, Levi, Yisachar, Binyamin, but he didn't rebuke Yehuda. He didn't rebuke Zevulun. He didn't rebuke Dan, Asher, Yosef, Naphtali. If perhaps Yaakov is merely telling them about the future, like it would seem from what he said to Yehuda, Dan, Gad, Asher, and Binyamin, he didn't tell Reuven anything about the future. He didn't tell Shimon anything about the future, not to Levi, not to Naphtali. And if he's telling them real estate information, he didn't tell any real estate to Reuven, to Shimon. In other words, what's Yaakov doing? Make up your mind. I mean, is there one thematic purpose in what Yaakov is telling his sons? You know, imagine Friday night, the kids line up for a bracha. So the first kid you say, you're a bum, get lost. The next kid you say, by the way, I want you to know when you move to Israel, I want you to live in Beit Shemesh on the 3rd street on the left hand. Okay. Yeah. The third kid, you're wonderful, you should live long, you're going to be mighty, you're going to be a king. The fourth kid, you tell the fourth kid, by the way, in the future, I think you're going to be an accountant. The fifth kid, you say, you're also a bum. I mean, what's Yaakov doing? What's Yaakov doing? It sounds like, you know what he's telling each kid? He's just saying with the first thing that pops into his head. You, criticism. You, blessing. You, the future. You, real estate. I mean, what exactly is the Birchas Yaakov? You read it every year. Some people even know it by heart. But I would venture to say no one has any clue what it's talking about, what it's all about. It's not a nevuah to everyone. It's not criticism to everyone. It's not a bracha to everyone. So is there any thematic approach what Yaakov Avinu is trying to accomplish in the Birchas Yaakov? Right? It takes up 28 psukim in the Chumash. It's a central portion of the Torah. What exactly is, or maybe it's not Birchas Yaakov. Maybe it's something else. So we have an amazing approach by the Abarbanel. I believe this is the first time we're giving serious attention to a piece on the Abarbanel. So it calls for some historical background. Abarbanel was born in the year 1437. Some say 1438. And he lived 71 years until 1508. 1508 is the year Reish Samach Ches. Reish Samach Ches, 1508. But the contemporaries of Abarbanel don't like to say he passed away in Reish Samach Ches. Instead, they invert the numbers to Ches Samach Reish, Chaser, to indicate that when Abarbanel passed away, the world was missing. So instead of Reish Samach Ches, Ches Samach Reish. By the way, 5 days before the Abarbanel passed away, the Mari Mintz passed away. And they're buried side by side. Right? Rabbi Obam led a trip to Italy. So Daniel Harris showed me the picture of the kever. You have the Abarbanel and the Mari Mintz buried right next to each other in Padua in Italy. Okay. It's very interesting. Abarbanel lived a very fascinating life. He was born in Portugal, in Lisbon. He becomes the finance minister of the king of Portugal, King Alfonso. Okay. 1481, King Alfonso dies. His son takes over. His son immediately assassinates all of his father's advisors. Abarbanel gets a message in the mail. King Alfonso wants him. He's about to go. So he said, no, King Alfonso, not the son of King Alfonso wants him. He's about to go. They say, Abarbanel, he's not summoning you to chazer over with him Masechta B'chairos. He wants to kill you. So the Abarbanel runs out of his house. The king gets word that the Abarbanel's on the run. As the guard's hand is about to grab the cloak of the Abarbanel, pull him in and kill him, Abarbanel crosses the Portuguese border, makes his way to Spain, and is saved. The last moment. He almost was caught. He comes to Spain. At first, people don't know exactly who Abarbanel is, but very, very quickly, he's recognized as one of the Gdolei Hadar, and soon the King Ferdinand, Queen Isabella find out about him, and they appoint him as the finance minister of Spain. And Abarbanel writes in his introduction to Sefer Melachim. By the way, in all of the introductions of the Abarbanel, he writes historical information about various episodes in his life. So what I just told you earlier comes from the Abarbanel's introduction to Sefer Yehoshua. In his introduction to Sefer Melachim, Abarbanel writes how he's working hard. King Ferdinand, Queen Isabella, they're working on the expulsion edict. And he's persuading them. He's convincing them. He's trying to pay them off that they should revoke the edict. No avail. By the way, there are many accounts how many Jews were expelled from Spain. The Abarbanel's account is the largest number. Abarbanel writes 300,000 Jews were expelled from Spain. How many Jews were known to have been left in Spain? Abarbanel writes 0. They were not aware of even one Jew. Certainly there were Marranos, people in hiding, but officially not one Jew was left in Spain. Abarbanel was given permission that he could remain as a practicing Jew, but he took off with the rest of his brothers. Erev Tisha B'Av, 1492, they leave Spain, and Abarbanel paskin they should play music as they're leaving Spain to raise their spirits. Okay, where does he go? He goes to Naples. He comes to Italy. And in Italy he sees a very strange thing. In Italy he sees people who are called rabbis. Rabbis, what a strange concept. Rabbi. Why is it such a strange concept? Because you look in the Chumash, there's no Rabbi Moshe, Rabbi David, Rabbi Yehoshua, Rabbi Aaron. No rabbis. Your name is Moshe. Your name is Aaron. The greatest title is your name. So Abarbanel wants to know, what happened to these rabbis? Oh, they have smicha? They don't have smicha. Smicha is the traditional smicha that dates back to Moshe Rabbeinu. Smicha in 1492? It's a joke. It's just a formality. You can't call yourself rabbi. What, because your boichen and yeshiva tested you on a few simanim in your Yoredeya, you're going to call yourself rabbi? Right? Where does this come from? Says Abarbanel, and he writes this in Perek Vav of his commentary in Pirkei Avos, Nachlas Avos. You know where rabbi comes from? It comes from the Goyim. The Goyim, they have doctorim, right? Doctor, they have doctors. So the Jews felt embarrassed, they felt unworthy. So they wanted to give a title to their clergymen, so they called them rabbi. He says Abarbanel, what an embarrassment that we have to copy the Goyim to give title. The greatest title is your name. You don't need a title. Shimcha, your name, right? Atahu Akiva, Sheshmai Hoylech, Mesoifa Olam Me'atsoifa, the name is the greatest title. Very interesting. Okay.
Rabbi Akiva, Rob?
Oh, they had real smicha. They had real smicha. Real smicha is something. Smicha from your local boichen, Abarbanel was not a fan of. Okay. So he comes to Italy, and he has to, even in Italy, he has to go from Naples to Corfu. He loses his svar. He loses his manuscript on Sefer Devarim. Can you imagine in those days he only had a manuscript? And Hashgacha Pratis had it. He meets someone who somehow ended up copying his manuscript. He's able to publish a Sefer on Devarim. The writings of Abarbanel were primarily on Jewish philosophy. So, for example, he has a trilogy called Migdal Yeshuos. Migdal Yeshuos is a 3-volume set on Mashiach. Why Mashiach? Because that was a very important concept if you lived in 1492. If you're being chased out of your home and everything you own is being taken away from you and you need some hope, the Abarbanel wrote 3 volumes on Mashiach. Volume 1 is called Yeshuos Mashiachai. Volume 2 is called Mayoneh HaYeshua. It's a commentary on Sefer Daniel. And volume number 3 is called Mashmiya Yeshua. Just I'll share with you something very interesting. The Abarbanel wrote a commentary on the Moreh Nevuchim. It's called Rosh Amana. And Abarbanel asked the following question on the Rambam. Many people challenge the Rambam. You look at the Rambam's 13 Ikrim, that there's Ribono Shel Olam, and there's Charanoinesh, and there's Tchias HaMesim, and Mashiach. And many Mefarshim ask on the Rambam forgot the most important Iker in Judaism. What's the most important principle in Judaism? Creation ex nihilo, yesh me'ayin. The Rambam omitted the fact that God created the world yesh me'ayin. Right? You say the Yud Gimel Ikrim, you would expect all the main fundamentals of Judaism to be there, and yet the Mefarshim asked, the Rambam omitted the most important fundamental principle, that Hashem created the world out of nothing. That's the question they ask on the Rambam. And the Rambam himself in the Moreh Nevuchim writes the following. He writes, Kvar hoidiacha, I've already let you know, sheyisoid ha-Torah kula, the foundation of the whole Torah is Shahashem himtzias ha'olam loy midavar, that God created the world out of nothing. So the Rambam himself agrees that creation ex nihilo is the central principle of the Torah. And yet in the Yud Gimel Ikrim, it's not there. So the Abarbanel writes, it is there. Where is it? Iker number 4. The Abarbanel writes, Ani mamin be'emunah shalema, shehaboire yisparach shemai hu rishon v'hu achrein. God is first and God is last. Ask Abarbanel, think for a moment, what does it mean God is first? God is first means that before anything was created, the Rebbeinu Shalom was there. That means there was a time when there was no matter, when nothing existed. So if that's the case, implicit in the fact that God existed before any matter, implicit in that is Yesh Me'ayin. Brias Ha'olam Yesh Me'ayin. Says Abarbanel, the Rambam did not omit creation Yesh Me'ayin. It's alluded to in Maimer number 4. It's an amazing thing. They recently discovered the Rambam's marginal notes on the Yud Gimel Ikrim. So you have notes the Rambam wrote with his own handwriting on the Yud Gimel Ikrim. And by Maimer number 4, the Rambam writes, included in this Maimer is Brias Ha'olam Yesh Me'ayin. So what the Abarbanel wrote 500 years ago was recently discovered that the Rambam himself writes that's what he meant. Okay, very interesting. So Abarbanel passes away in the year Ches Samach Reish, and I'm going to save one biographical detail for the end of the shiur, but remind me to tell you, okay? And this is the most important biographical detail. Comes Abarbanel, and Abarbanel wants to know, so what exactly is the purpose of the Birchas Yaakov? It's not criticism, it's not a bracha, it's not the future, it's not real estate information. And then take a look at number 5. Abarbanel asks, in the bracha to Yehuda, Yaakov tells Yehuda, Lo yasur shevet mi Yehuda. Right? You take a look in your psukim over here. This is in Pasuk Yud. Lo yasur shevet mi Yehuda. Malchus, kingship, dominion will never be removed from Shevet Yehuda. Says Abarbanel, is that true? Kings always came from Yehuda? Was Shaul HaMelech from Yehuda? Was Yeravam ben Nevat from Yehuda? Were there the Chashmonaim? The Hasmonean dynasty, they were Kaihanim. They were not from Yehuda. What does it mean, Lo Yasur Shem Yehuda? What about today? Are there kings today from Yehuda? We haven't had kings for 2,000 years. But Yaakov Avinu is saying, Lo Yasur Sheva Yehuda. What does that mean? What does that mean? And what does the pasuk say? Ad ki yavai Shilai. Until Shilai. That means we'll have kings until Shilai? And after Shilai we won't have kings? All the kings came after Shiloh. David came after Shiloh. Shlomo came after Shiloh. All the Malchus Beit David came after Shiloh. Or does Shiloh mean Mashiach? David, Malchus Beit David will only be until Mashiach comes? No. When Mashiach comes, that's when the Malchus Beit David first gets started. So B'chlal, what does it mean that there will always be kings from Yehuda? It's not the case. It's not true. And how do we explain these psukim? Ad ki yavai Shilai. Look at number 6. Let's talk a little bit about Yisachar and Dan. Please, somebody tell me, what is Yaakov telling Yisachar? You're a donkey? You're a chamar? Is that a compliment? Is that a criticism? Is that just a fact of reality? What's he telling him? And Dan, you're a snake on the road. Once Dan heard he's a snake, I don't think Dan cared if he's a snake on the road, under the road, on top of the road. And then, most mysterious of all, take a look at Pasuk Yud Ches. Right? In terms of words, shortest pasuk in the Torah. After Yaakov talks about Dan, he says, Lishuasecha kivisi Hashem. What does that got to do with the price of tea in China? Lishuasecha kivisi Hashem. What, Yaakov Avinu is saying Kriya Shema Lamita now? Right? Lishuasecha, maybe you should say Hamapil. Right? Maybe go to sleep. What's Lishuasecha? It's Kiddush Levana. What's Lishuasecha kivisi Hashem? What does that have to do with Dan? Lishuasecha kivisi Hashem, why doesn't he flip it around? Hashem Lishuasecha kivisi. What is this? Once we're at it, why doesn't Yaakov say Yivarechecha Hashem Yishmerecha? Yaakov could say Shema Yisrael. Maybe I could throw in a few catchy tunes. What's it doing here? Is it a bracha? Who is it said to? What's it doing here? Okay. Then the Abarbanel wants to know. Take a look in Pasuk Beis. Pasuk Aleph. Vayikro Yaakov Abana Vayomer Heyasfu. Gather v'yagid alechem, and I'll tell you. And then Pasuk Beis. He kavtzu, gather v'shimu, and listen. They just gathered in Pasuk Aleph. Why is he telling them again to gather? How many gatherings do they need to make? Pasuk Aleph is Heyasfu, gather v'agida, and I'll tell you. Pasuk Beis. He kavtzu, gather v'shimu, and listen. So what is this all about? So we have in number 8, and this is really the crux of the shiur. This is the main point of the shiur. And says the Abarbanel, was Yaakov giving a bracha to his sons? No. Was Yaakov criticizing his sons? Nope. Was Yaakov telling his sons about the future? Was Yaakov telling them about real estate in Israel? Nope. He was doing something else entirely. You know what Yaakov Avinu was doing? Yaakov Avinu sees Kanai Nahar, he has 12 kids. In no time, they're going to be 100, 1,000. And they all have different personalities, and they all have different inclinations, and they're all so disparate. They need a leader. Who's going to be the leader? They need a melech. They need a king. Who's going to be the melech Yisrael? At this critical point in history, says Abarbanel, Yaakov recognized with 12 sons who are all strong personalities, who all had different inclinations, they need a melech. Who's going to be melech Yisrael? Yaakov is not criticizing his sons. He's not blessing his sons. He's not telling them about the future. He's not telling them about Eretz Yisrael. He is merely going through every son, seeing if they meet the requirements. Are they eligible to be Melech Yisrael? And one by one, Yaakov examines their personality, their future, where they're going to live. What qualities do they have? Do they have the necessary qualities for leadership? Yaakov is looking for a leader. He's not trying to give them a bracha. Not a time for bracha now. Not a time for criticism. It's not a time for musa. It's a time to prepare for the future of Klal Yisrael. We need a melech. So Yaakov Avinu starts with Ruvain. Take a look at number 9. You can look at the psukim. Yaakov says in Pasuk Gimel, Ruvain, b'chayri ata, you're my firstborn. You're my firstborn? Technically, you should be the king. You should be the melech. Koichi, you're my strength. My first seed came and created you. Reishis oini, I created you when I was in my prime, when I had my full strength. And therefore, Yeser says, you should have more majesty. The Yeser Oz, you should have more strength. You should be the melech. But one problem, Ruvain. Pachas kamayim al toisar, you don't have the personality. Yaakov is not criticizing. Yaakov is not chastising. He's not rebuking. He's saying the facts. Reuben, you don't have what it takes. Why? Pachas kamayim, you're impetuous. You make quick decisions. You make rash decisions. Remember when I decided to move the Mitzah into the Oyhel of Bila and you took it out? You need to be more deliberate. You can't just react. You can't just make decisions on your own. You have to be having mesunim bedin. You have to think things through. Melech b'mishpat yamod eretz. You have to do things with justice. You're not a bad guy. You're a wonderful guy. And there's time to be impetuous. And there are times to make rash decisions. And maybe you didn't do the wrong thing. But you don't have the personality to be the king. You're pachas kamayim. And therefore, Ruvain, I love you, but you're not the man for the job. No punishment, no criticism, no rebuke. Fact! You're disqualified from being the king. You can't be the melech. Take a look at number 10, Shimon and Levi. Shimon and Levi, achim. You're both brothers. In other words, whatever disqualification I find in you is a common denominator in both of you. You both ran to protect your sister Dinah. You showed her brotherhood. But here's the problem. Klei chamas mecheroiseyem. Your wares are violent. Your wares are violent. Yes, you had to go take revenge against the city of Shechem. But a melech is very careful in how he metes out justice. A melech doesn't just say, oh, somebody's rebelling. Let's take my whole army and wipe them out like that. No. There's a concept. Malchus needs tzedek. It needs justice. It needs mishpat. You're not qualified. Shimon and Levi, you're too angry. You have too much of a temper. You're hotheads. You'll be good as Rabbeim for Klal Yisrael. You'll show the Jewish children the fiery passion for the Torah. You'll show them that we don't tolerate any deviance. You'll show Mesiras Nefesh. But you can't be the king. The king requires more level-headedness. You could be a Rebbe in yeshiva. The kids act up. They need to see a certain kanost. They need to see a zealousness. Rabbi Yaakov Kamenetsky writes, Rabbeim have to show Mesiras Nefesh. They have to show extreme energy for Torah, but not the Melech. Because klei chamas v'cheroseim. You didn't act with mishpat, you acted violently, chamas. I'm not saying you did the wrong thing, maybe you did the right thing. Maybe the time's called for it. But that's not what a melech is, that's not what a king is. A king, melech b'mishpat yamoid eretz. A melech meets out punishment with justice, with chachma. And therefore Shimon and Levi, here's another problem. Take a look at this. Achal came be Yaakov. Levi, you have no security. The Levium lived in 48 cities. They're scattered all over Eretz Yisrael. They don't dwell securely. This Levi lives here. They're always traveling. They're always on the go. They're traveling to the Beis HaMikdash. They don't have the secure foundation and the tranquility to have and engender the attribute of Malchus. Shimon also. Shimon did not have one land. His land jutted out in between the land of Yehuda. He did not have firm territory. His territory was, dispersed among Yehuda. Without real estate, you don't have the confidence to stand up and do what needs to do. Right? The terra firma, when you have the real estate under you, when you have land, land gives a man confidence. It gives you gvura. And therefore Shimon and Levi, you're disqualified from Malchus. But then Yaakov Avinu turns to Yehuda and he says, I think I found my man. Yehuda, I think you're the man for the job. You have the 4 qualities that it takes to be a melech. What are the 4 qualities? Take a look on your sheet. Number 11. In order to be a melech, what's the difference between a melech and a moshel? Right? A king, a melech and a moshel. A moshel is a dictator. A moshel is the people don't want him. The people would like to throw him out. But the moshel, he's too strong for them. And he dictates what needs to be done. He rules with an iron fist. Nobody wants him there, but there's no choice. A melech rules with the consent of the people. Nobody's jealous of a melech. Everyone recognizes the melech needs to be there. Everyone acknowledges the grandeur of the melech. Now when it comes to jealousy, sometimes people are jealous of others who have more than them. But as much as a person is jealous, among siblings, jealousy is most prevalent. As jealous as people are always jealous more of their brothers and sisters. Why? Says Abarbanel, because a brother and a sister, you think to yourself, I was created from the same father and mother. I have the same lot in life. I have the same talents. Why shouldn't I have what he has, what she has? So whenever it comes to brothers and sisters, there's always the most jealousy. But Yehuda, look at you. Ata yoiducha achecha. All the brothers acknowledge that you're the greatest. They're not jealous of you. They all look up to you. When it came to Yosef, they didn't know what to do. Everyone stops. They're quiet. Yehuda talks. Ma betza. Let's not touch him. They listen. When they go to Yosef, who opens his mouth? Vayigashe la'av Yehuda. Yehuda. What happened to Zvulun and Dan? They all take a back seat. They all acknowledge Yehuda's the leader. So Yaakov says, you have the most important quality to be the melech. What is it? Yoiducha achecha. There's no jealousy. They acknowledge, they admit, they concede, you are the leader. Number 2, in order to be a melech, you need military prowess. You need to be a strong force. You need to be able to conquer. You need to be able to fight. Yehuda, yadcha ba'oyref oyevecha. Your hand is on the neck of the enemy. You pursue their enemy and they run from you. Like David HaMelech says, ve'oyevai nosata li oyref. They give me your neck. David pursues the enemy and the enemy runs. They don't even put up a fight. So Yehuda has the second quality of Malchus, and that is military prowess. Number 3, Shimon and Levi were a little too violent. They did not mete out justice properly with Chachma. But Yehuda, you're not a violent person. You're Gur Aryeh. You're a young lion cub. A young lion cub. It's like a pussycat. Is gentle, is calm, does not tear apart, does not rip apart. You don't have the violent nature of Shimon and Levi. And therefore you are worthy to be the king. And number 4, you have stability. You have endurance. You're like a grown lion. Kilavi miyakimenu. So Yehuda, you have the 4 qualities of Malchus. Number 1, the most important quality. Ata yoiducha achecha. There's no jealousy. If I make you the king, everyone will say, you're the king. Everyone will acknowledge your rulership. If you're the king, you have the military prowess. Yadcha ba'aref oyevecha. If you're the king, you have the calmness. You're level-headed. You won't tear apart. You're a gur aryeh, you're a young cub. And number 4, you have the stability and endurance for the Malchus. Says the Abarbanel, now listen carefully. But Yaakov said, kings will always come from Yehuda. But that's not true. Shaul was a king. Yeravam was a king. For the last 2,000 years, we didn't have kings. So what does he mean? Kings will always come from Yehuda. Says the Abarbanel, Yaakov never said that. Yaakov never said, Lo Yasser Malchus Yehuda. He said, Lo Yasser Shevet Yehuda. You know what Shevet means? Torah leadership. Gedolei Yisrael. Listen to this. Says Abarbanel, from the beginning of time, the leaders of the Jewish people always came from Shevet Yehuda. Very interesting. From Yehuda himself. When they didn't know what to do with Yosef, he said, what did Yehuda say? Ma betza, let's not kill him. When they had a confrontation with Yosef, Vayigash Elav Yehuda. When Yaakov wasn't sure, should we send Binyamin, should we not? Reuven said, send him. Yaakov said, Reuven, I'm not listening to you. Yehuda said, send him. Yaakov sent. When they traveled, whose flag was held up first? Who was the first flag? Degel Machane Yehuda. Which Shevet traveled first? Yehuda traveled. When they brought karbanos to inaugurate the Mizbeach, Nachshon ben Aminadav Lamata Yehuda. When they distributed the land, who was in charge of distributing the land? Kalev ben Yefune Lamata Yehuda. When they conquered the land, Moshe said, Yehuda Yala. Yehuda goes up first. Whenever we attack Amalek in Tanakh, we count the Jews, we count Yehuda separately. They're the leaders of Klal Yisrael. Says the Abarbanel, but what happened since the first Beis HaMikdash? The Reish Galusa always came from Shevet Yehuda. The Rosh Sanhedrin always came from Shevet Yehuda. Take a look at number 13. Amazing words. Says Abarbanel, for the last 1,500 years, the Gedolei Yisrael have come from Shevet Yehuda. Look what he writes on the 3rd line, number 13. V'chein haya hadavar gam hayoim. Today, in the year 1500, begolos ha'arach hazeh, in this long, bitter golos, ad sarfas, whether you're in France, v'golos Yerushalayim asher b'sfarad, whether you're in Spain, ein safek, there's no doubt, shahanasiyim, the leaders, v'hanegidim, the princes, asher hayu ha'malachim ha'kehilos mamanu amnei Yisrael, whenever communities appoint leaders, you know where they come from? Kulam mizera beis David. They all come, they're descendants of David HaMelech. Lekayim la yasser sheva mi Yehuda. By the way, if you look in the introduction of the Shas Chuvas Shalom Eshev from Rav Yosef Shal HaLevi Natanzan, he also points out that many Gedolei Yisrael come from Shevet Levi. Okay, but now we're talking about Shevet Yehuda. But the vast majority of Gedolei Yisrael, of Jewish leaders, come from Shevet Yehuda. This is a fruition. When you see a Gedolei Yisrael, Rabbi Yoshev, Reb Chaim Kanievsky, Rabbi Vadia Yosef, when you see a Gedolei Yisrael, and you know what Shevet does he come from? He comes from Shevet Yehuda. This is the Nevuah of Yaakov Avinu, La Yasser Shevet Mi Yehuda. So I was very amazed to see that when the Chidah gives some bibliographic information on the Abarbanel himself, he writes, Abarbanel was Choiter Migeza Yishai. Abarbanel was a Ben Achar Ben from David HaMelech. Wow. So these words, you really see Aroi Lamisha Amram. Abarbanel felt about himself that he himself was this fruition of the Nevuah of La Yasser Shem Yehuda. He was Choiter Migeza Yishai. He himself was a descendant of David HaMelech. By the way, once we're on the topic of Yehuda and the contributions of David, if I were to ask you what were the main contributions of David, HaMelech, and Shlomo, Sefer Tehillim, Sefer Mishlei, Shir HaShirim, Koheles, yeah? Says the Chassam Sofer, all of these 4 Sfarim are alluded to in the words of Yaakov Avinu. Yehuda ata yoiducha, you're going to praise. What kind of praise? Tehillim. Tehillim. Yoiducha, praise with the Yud. How many people wrote Tehillim? 10 people wrote Tehillim. Yoiducha. Loi Yasur Shevet mi Yehuda, says Chassam Sofer number 14, is Rashi Tevois Mishlei. Loi Yasur Shevet mi Yehuda Mishlei. Ad Kiyavoi Shiloi. Shiloi is Rashi Tevois Shir Hashirim Lishleimai. V'lo Yikahas Amim, Yikahas is Koheles. Lo Yikahas is Koheles. So you have the 4 Sfarim of David and Shlomo. You have Tehillim Ata Yeducha, Mishlei Lo Yasur Shevet mi Yehuda, Shir Hashirim Ad Kiyavoi Shiloi, Koheles V'lo Yikahas Amim. So says the Chassam Sofer. Pasuk says in Tehillim, Perek Lamed Vav, V'nachal Adonecha, a sweet river, Sashkem, you will give to drink. David HaMelech and Shlomo gave the Jewish people the sweetest river. Tashkem, Taf, Tehillim. Shin, Shir Hashirim. Kuf, Koheles, Mem, Mishlei. So Yehuda, you have what it takes. Now, Yaakov continues. What about Zevulun? Zevulun is a wonderful guy. Zevulun is beautiful. One problem. Zevulun, L'choif, Yamim Yishkain. Zevulun, do you know where you live? You live by the seacoast. What was Zevulun? Zevulun was a businessman, right? A Jewish profession. He was a businessman. There's one problem. A king cannot be a businessman. It's a wonderful job. It's a wonderful profession. The king cannot be a businessman. Imagine you come into the king, and he's sitting on his throne, you bow down to the king, and all of a sudden the king opens up the suit. Hey, you want to buy a watch? Right? Yeah. And he opens up his sleeve, he has 30 watches on his thing. And you're talking to the king, you're trying to get protection. He says, by the way, I have a great deal. We'll talk about it later. Right? It's not becoming, pasnished, that the king should be involved in different business deals. So, Zvulun, you're a great guy. You're going to be good at business. Smach Zvulun b'tzeisecha, I wish you bracha v'hatzlacha. You should make a lot of money. You should be mefarnes Torah institutions. But you can't be the king. The king can't be a businessman. How about Yisachar? Yisachar, you're like a chamor. No, it's a compliment. Why? You work the land. Vayar menucha kitayv. You like to work, and then you like to rest. You put in your work, then you get your vacation. You put in your work, you can't handle the rigors of being a king, the constant stresses. You're a king, you're on call 24 hours a day. No, Yisachar likes to put in hard work, and then he likes to take off. 9 to 5 job, 6 days a week. He gets his 30 vacation days. Obviously this is, simplified, but that's the meaning of it. Yisachar, and how do we know this? Because the pasuk says, Vayechi lamas oved. Yisachar is a loyal citizen. He pays taxes. You ever hear such a thing? Right. He's Jewish, so yeah, he was. Vayechi lamas oved. He pays taxes. Who do you pay taxes to? The king. So he's going to be the king? He's a loyal citizen. He works 9 to 5. He puts in a solid day work. He rests when he's done. He pays his taxes. But he's not a king. He gives taxes to the king. What about Dun? Dun. Dun's a close one. Dun Yadin Amai. Dun could judge. He's level-headed. He has chachma. He has what it takes. He's done. Yadin Amai. And number 2, he's mighty. He could bite you like a snake. So he has the chachma, like a judge, and he has the military prowess. But there are 2 problems with Dun. Dun Yadin Amai Ka'achad Shiftei Yisrael. When the other Shvatim would look at Dun, they would not recognize his superiority. They would say, he's just like one of us. Dun Yadin Amai, he's Ka'achad Shiftei Yisrael. He's just like one of us. And here's the problem. But he has military success. He could bite you like a snake. Now this is amazing. Listen to this. If you're a king and you're fighting a war, you don't ambush. You don't go undercover. You don't wait behind some mountain and then sneak up on your enemy and then get them when they're most vulnerable. That's weak. That shows chalusha. That shows weakness. That's cowardly. What does a melech do? All out gevura. The melech says, I'm coming to kill you. You could run, you could hide, I'm going to get you, I'm going to kill you. I'm telling you exactly tomorrow, 9 o'clock, I am going to chop off every one of your heads. That's a melech. He doesn't hide, he doesn't make any plans. Gevura, open might, no tricks, no ambushes. Malchus has to display majesty. But Dun is like a snake. Dun sneaks up on you from behind. He bites the hind leg of the horse and he throws the rider backward. That's not Malchus. That's not a melech. A melech has to go head on. He has to show no fear. He tells the enemy, I'm coming to get you. 6 o'clock, be ready. Or don't be ready, it doesn't matter. Open gevura. But that's not Dun. Dun is shvifain alei derach, alei oirach. He's slithering up when you least expect. That's wonderful, that's beautiful, but that's not a melech. So when after Yaakov Avinu Baruch HaKodesh sees that Dun doesn't have what it takes because he's tricky, he's undercover, you know what Yaakov says? Lishuascha kivisi Hashem. God, we hope for your kind of salvation. What's the salvation of God? What does Rashi say in Beshalach? Hashem didn't take us out of Mitzrayim, 3 o'clock in the morning when the Mitzrayim didn't know about it. Hashem says, hey Mitzrayim, tomorrow, in broad daylight, we're going out and see if you could stop us. God displays Malchus. The salvation of God is open. Befarhesya, befumbi. Nobody could ignore it. It's public. So when Yaakov sees Dun, he says, Lishuascha kibis Hashem. Dun, you're disqualified. That's not the salvation we're hoping for. We're hoping for open salvation. We're hoping for the salvation of Hashem. And then Yaakov takes a look at God. He says, God, Gadud Yegudenu. God, you're going to be the first to go into exile. Sancheriv takes you out of Eretz Yisrael before anybody else. You're constantly attacked. You don't have what it takes for Malchus. Asher, you live in a very fertile region. You're going to be a good baker. You're going to make nice cakes, nice bread. But the king is going to be a baker? The baker is going to bring bread to the king. So what does Yaakov tell Asher? V'hu yitain Madane Melech. You're not the king. You're going to provide the treats for the king. The delicacies for the king. And how about Yosef? Naphtali. And how about Naphtali? Naphtali, very talented guy. He's swift. He could bring swift messages. And he could be employed by the king for what the king needs. This is not a talent for the king. This is a talent for those in service of the king. Yosef, almost there. Bein Pairas Yosef, Bein Pairas Aleayim. You have 2 attributes. Number 1, Bein Pairas Yosef. You could conquer your Yetzer Hara. In the greatest temptation, you overcome. You have no tests. You have no challenges. You have a strong Yetzer Tov. You could overcome any temptation. Number 2, Aleayin. You're such a good-hearted guy. You're so generous. You supported your father. You supported your brothers. You have generosity. You have nedivos. You overcome the Yetzer Hara. There's only one problem, Yosef. Vayistamuhu varoivu. You were so great that the brothers were jealous. And you can't have a king who the people are jealous of. It's not going to work. So what Yaakov is saying, Yosef, you have so much gedula. You have so much greatness that when the brothers look at you, they see you're an entirely different entity. We know Yosef was almost on the level of Yaakov. But when the brothers saw Yosef, instead of acknowledging his greatness, it produced jealousy. And because of that, Yosef could not be the Melech. So after Yaakov Avinu examines all of the Shvatim, he's not giving them a bracha. That's not the purpose. He's not criticizing them. That's not the purpose. He's not telling them the future. He's not telling them where they're going to live in Eretz Yisrael. He's just examining one thing. Who is going to be the next Melech Yisrael? Ruvain, you're too impetuous. Shimon and Levi, violence. Yisachar, you're a worker. Zevulun, you're a businessman. Asher, you're a baker. You don't have the qualities of Malchus. Yosef, the brothers were jealous of you. But Yehuda, Ata yoducha achecha. Number one, all the brothers acknowledge your superiority. Number two, you have the military prowess. Yadcha b'aref oivecha. Yishtachavu lecha b'nei avicha. Not just your own mother, not just the descendants of Leah, but all the children. Everyone, even from someone from a different mother than you. All the descendants of Yaakov, Yishtachavu, says Abarbanel. That's why Yaakov points out, Yishtachavu lecha b'nei avicha. All of my sons, not just your full brothers, even your half brothers, they all acknowledge your greatness. Done. You're too sly. You're too much trickery, too much underhandedness. That's not the salvation we're hoping for. We're hoping for lishuascha kivisi Hashem. We're hoping for God's open salvation. And after examining all of the Shvatim and Binyamin, you're a wolf. What does that mean? You are snatching spoils. That's not appropriate for the king. The king has to conduct his affairs without any interest of money. Let me just end with the following. Why was it so crucial at this point in time Yaakov established a king? After all, they were not leaving Mitzrayim for many hundreds of years. They were not going to the Midbar yet. They still had a long time to go. Why at this juncture in time is Yaakov Avinu proclaiming and declaring Malchus to Yehuda?
Shiur.
Says the Shlach Kadosh. We know that when Yosef was being sold down to Mitzrayim, just give me a couple more minutes. As Yosef is being sold down to Mitzrayim, we interrupt the regular story to talk about the story of Yehuda and Tamar. So Yosef is being sold down to Mitzrayim. It says, Yosef's in Mitzrayim. And then we sort of deviate, we digress, and we talk about Yehuda and Tamar. Yehuda lived with Tamar, and he produced Zarach and the future Davidic dynasty. And then we go back to the regular scheduled story of Yosef and Mitzrayim. Ask the Shlach Kadosh, why are we interrupting the sale of Yosef with the episode of Yehuda and Tamar? Says the Shlach, a very important concept. That in Jewish history, we have a principle that Yosef always comes first, followed by Yehuda. Malchus belongs to Yehuda. Yehuda is always the king. But Yosef is the Yesod. Yosef is the foundation of Klal Yisrael. Yosef makes Klal Yisrael into a nation. Once we're a nation, we're eligible for a king. You can't have a king if you're not a people. If you're just a disparate group of individuals, you can't have a king. Yosef forges us into an Am, and then Yehuda takes over and becomes the Melech. This repeats itself again and again. Where do we have this? Klal Yisrael goes down to Mitzrayim. Yosef's our ruler, but Yosef doesn't want to be the Melech. He's just molding us. He's just forging us into a people. As soon as we leave Mitzrayim, B'tseis Yisrael mi Mitzrayim, Beis Yaakov loyes, Haisa Yehuda lakacha. Yehuda takes over. We get to Eretz Yisrael. We're 12 Shvatim. We're disparate. We have Mishkan where? Where's the Mishkan? Mishkan Shiloh. Yosef forges us as a people. As soon as we have Mishkan Shiloh, Shiloh is destroyed. The Beis HaMikdash moves to Shevet Yehuda. Yosef is the Yesod. Yosef is the pipeline to heaven. Yosef forges us into a Am. Yehuda takes over as the Melech. Yosef always prepares the way for Yehuda. Says the Shlach Kadosh in Parshas Vayigash, Yosef tells his brothers, "Vayishlacheni Elokim lefnechem." God sent me before you. Losum lachem she'eris, to give you a remnant. Ulahacha yoslachem lefleita gedolan, to give you a great salvation. Ask the Shlach Kadosh, the pasuk contradicts itself. First Yosef says, I'm going to give you she'eris. I'm going to give you sharayim. I'm going to give you a remnant. And then he concludes, I'm going to give you lefleita gedola, a great salvation. Which one was it? Was Yosef giving us a small she'eris, or was Yosef giving us a great salvation? Says the Shlach Kadosh, Yosef was telling his brothers, there are 2 times in history where I paved the way for you. One is the first time, and the first time may be slightly insignificant. When I go down to Mitzrayim, and I make you into a nation, then Yehuda will take over as Melech. That's the first time. She'eris ba'aretz. But there's going to be another time in history. At the end of days, B'achris hayamim, when Yosef is telling his brothers, I am going to pave the way for you to create 12 Shvatim into one Am, so that Yehuda could take over with the Malchus Beis David. And that is when Mashiach comes. Because we have a tradition. First comes Mashiach ben Yosef, and then comes Mashiach ben David. Says Yosef, in Mitzrayim, this is a small deal over here. I come down, I get you all together, I give you the food, I make you a nation, then Yehuda will take over. That's She'eris Bar. But La'asid Lavoi, I'm going to give you Pleito Gedola, a great salvation. And we know Mashiach ben David, which is preceded by Mashiach ben Yosef. Mashiach ben Yosef is going to die before Mashiach ben David comes. Why? It's a punishment. As important a job as Yosef did in Mitzrayim, he took too much melucha. Can't be the king. If Yosef is going to be the king, he has to be like Shaul. Shaul just borrowed the melucha temporarily. But Yosef took a little too much. So La'asid Lavo, Yosef is going to correct that. He's going to pave the way for Malchus Beis David. Mashiach ben Yosef will fight for us. He'll create an Am. Mashiach ben David takes over. Therefore, says the Shah Kadosh, as Yosef is being sent down to Mitzrayim, what is the main objective of what Yosef is trying to accomplish? Paving the way for Malchus Yehuda, for Malchus Beis David. So we inject in the story of Yosef being sold down to Mitzrayim, we inject the story of Yehuda and Tamar, so that everyone recognizes, why is Yosef being sold down to Mitzrayim? To pave the way for Malchus Beis David. So in the middle of the story, we inject the episode of Yehuda and Tamar. And perhaps that is why, at this moment in time, when Yaakov Avinu recognizes for the first time why Yosef was sent down to Mitzrayim, he sees Yosef brought all the brothers down. He sees them all standing together. He sees them being forged as a nation. He sees Yosef was successful in his great mission of Yesod Yosef, of forging the 12 Shvatim into an Am. Yaakov says, now it's time for step 2. And step 2 is Yehuda, Ato Yaducha Achecha. Now that Yosef did his job, now that Yosef fulfilled this holy mission of creating Am Yisrael, now it's time for Yehuda to be appointed the Melech, and to pave the way for the Geulas Yisrael. We should be Zoicha to Malchus Beis David and Hervi Amenu. Amen. Oh, so thank you. So I stuck it in. I got in the Abarbanel. The Abarbanel himself, who learns this whole thematic approach in Birchas Yaakov, he himself was a scion of the Malchus Beis David. He was a descendant of the Malchus Beis David. He was a Choiter Geizer Yishai, and this is. You see his own personal story being used to explain the episode of the Birchas Yaakov. Okay, Rabbi say.
You've just experienced another Torah class brought to you by TorahAnytime.com.